Before we get going into your Hockey IQ podcast episode, I want to thank our sponsor, Rapid Shot. Rapid Shot is the smart shooting lane. It's like a batting cage for hockey players. Very cool. Tracks your shot in three ways: accuracy, shot speed, and reaction time. Easy to use. Actually, I used it when I played and was growing up. Very easy. Simply scan your phone in, select your settings, and start shooting. You can see your stats on the app and online. You can check them out at rapidshot.com. Great small business. I actually grew up with one of the owner's sons and have played with all the family members by now, just in local pickups here in Ohio. Very cool local business. Awesome product. I love it. I know quite a few NHLers have them in their homes. A lot of D1 programs have it at their rinks. So you have to check this out. Rapidshot.com. Check it out. Rapid Shot, thank you so much for sponsoring our podcast. On the Hockey IQ podcast today, we bring on Russ Sinkewich. Super excited to bring on Russ. He's a guy I wanted to have on for a long, long time. We finally were able to make it happen. Started all the way in Cleveland, worked his way up to the AHL, storied career, and now is passionate about giving back to the game with the Ohio Hockey Project. So, Russ, thanks for being here. And why don't you tell us a little bit, maybe a 30-second background? I know that I try to keep it really short, but we got a lot to dig into.
Yeah, no, I appreciate you having me on. This is great what you're doing with this. You touched on it, but Cleveland guy, and I was very fortunate to really play at every level the city had to offer. And while I was playing, I quickly was assessing what I want to do when hockey's done. And for me, it was I wanted to coach, but I didn't always want to be behind a bench. I wanted to try to do some greater good. And, why not start in the community that I felt gave me so much, and that was Northeast Ohio. So that's when, back in like 2008, 2009, when we started the Ohio Hockey Project, and just a third-party skill development group. We don't do teams, we don't do tournaments. We purely work on the player, the family, education, not only from a skill side, but decision making and everything in between that. But I literally eat, sleep, breathe, live hockey every day. So
it's beautiful. I want to start today talking about when players should go to the next level, because you played in the AHL, you played in NCAA hockey, and no offense to Ohio high school hockey, it's probably not the most premium product out there, but you started your high school career on the JV team and went from there. So I'm curious to hear from your story, your side, what it was like, your journey from there all the way to the professional ranks.
Yeah. I mean, honestly, I would almost define myself as like a have-not my whole career. I played at like a house level till I was a peewee. I played AA hockey till I was a bantam. I played JV hockey till I was a junior. I was kind of always a kid living in a bubble, which in hindsight was actually the best thing for me to have that adversity at a young age and constantly be having to work for things. But, this is a really good topic because a lot of families ask me this, and I think it's not just only in Cleveland or Northeast Ohio. I think it's everywhere where kids and families are always looking at like the next step and going to the next place, and obviously wanting to better yourself and reach goals, which could be really attainable. But kind of the metric that I always use, and when I advocate this to families and players, is a jump to the next level isn't warranted until you're a game changer where you're at. Obviously that's a loose definition because game changers come in a lot of different shapes and sizes and forms and whatnot, but I'm a firm believer that if you're not impacting the game, let's just say at a house level, what would validate your jump to a AA level, or same thing from AA to AAA, or whatever, from maybe like a high school to junior or whatever it might be. But that's kind of a metric that I felt over, at any level, in any city, whatever, it really kind of stands the test of time, because if you're not a game changer, if you're not a dynamic player, if you're not making an impact, from shift to shift or game to game, well, ultimately the next level is filled with just the next crop of, quote unquote, good or better players. So it's hard to say, hey, yeah, I'm such a great player if I'm not changing the game where I'm currently at. And it's a fine line because you don't necessarily have to be a game changer to find an opportunity at the next level, because there is a lot of opportunity. There's a lot of organizations and in any city, for that matter, and a lot of different leagues at every level. But I always think that that's a really safe metric, that if I'm a player and I lived it and I felt like, my maturity from level to level, from junior leagues, and, I went from, one league to a better league to a best league, and it was a really organic growth. And everywhere I stopped, I gained a lot of confidence at that stop. I gained a lot of self-improvement. My skill improved. My perspective as a player improved. And then ultimately, I think that's what warranted, my jump from, JV to varsity, or, a tier 3 junior team to a tier 2 to a tier 1, or whatever it would have been. I think that's always the best way to look at that, going from the next level.
I think there's a lot to do with being able to process the game, because the game is so fast at the higher and higher levels. If you're unable to get at or above the speed mentally, like, you can be physically better and just dominate that way, but you're going to struggle at the next levels. Like, you need to find a place where your mental processing is at the level of the game, if not a little bit above, so you can experiment and add layers into your game. I think that's probably a key underlying component of what you're talking about. And I think you're absolutely true. Like, you need to dominate before you move on, because it only gets better, only gets tougher, and how do you go about maybe not just dominating with one A game, but dominating with a B and a C game, where no matter what comes against you or what team you're playing, you can still have success. I think that's a key element. I'm curious for you, how did you go about adding to your skill set and making these jumps in relatively quick order?
I look back and, so I'm 36 years old. I didn't probably have a lot of resources that, let's just say, like a 16-year-old or whatever has today, or even a younger kid has today, with social media and a smartphone in your pocket and YouTube and all that stuff. But I genuinely and wholeheartedly believe that you got to be a student of the game. And what I mean, and I'm sure coaches have said this to their players, and maybe parents have, but, to me, I always define being a student of the game as just, I was so engulfed in like the learning process of it. Like, something as simple as, if a coach is explaining something, to one of my teammates or whoever, like, I was engaged in learning from that coaching criticism, even though it had nothing to do with me. Or simple things with, I was really lucky, and my dad would take me to, we'd go to University of Michigan games and college games, and we'd go to Cleveland Lumberjacks back when they were an IHL team, all the time. And I just remember I was so enamored with like getting early there and watching the warm-ups and like watching patterns in the game and what players did. And I was a defenseman, so I was just glued to every right defenseman in the game at all times. And there's like that process of, wow, what are they doing? What are better players doing? And, I'd go, like any kid, I'd watch NHL games at night, and I didn't care about the score. I didn't care about the superstars as much as I cared about, like, oh, that's what an overload power play is, or, oh, that's what a D2D hinge was. And I just remember learning these like really important components to the game, but at a young age. And it was, most of which was kind of self-taught, because I mean, ultimately I was just super passionate about the sport. So like anything you're passionate about, it's fun to get good at things. And well, what an opportunity just to improve yourself, and the better you get at it. I think that was for me. And then the other thing was, and I don't like to use the word compare to other players, because ultimately a big part of my career, I did have my blinders on and I stayed in my lane with what I needed to do. But, having the opportunity to be surrounded by older players, or I used to make a living at like stick and puck. I would go to these stick and pucks everywhere around the city. And every now and again, there'd be like a junior kid or a college kid. And mind you, I'd be like 15 or 16 or 14, just getting dropped off there. And I just remember like trying to get reps against older, better kids that really had no business being on the ice with, from an age and ability standpoint, but just getting this high of like trying to stop them, or like just watching what they were doing, and again, I didn't have the luxury of, YouTube on my iPhone in my pocket, or Instagram, or any of that stuff. I had rinks, and I'd have to call the rink and find the stick and puck schedule and go to stick and puck with my friends and whatever. But being a student of the game ultimately that's, I think, what makes or breaks a kid's, personal and individual development.
It takes a lot for a player to get to that mental maturity. Have you always been that kind of player who's been mentally strong and really thoughtful on this? Or is this something you've learned to love? And this will maybe be a two-part question on this back end of like, how do you help players love the game more? Because once you love it, you can give more, and the more you give, the better you're going to get and the more you'll get out of it. So it's kind of like a catch-22. The more you do, you might burn out, but you got to find ways to love the game. And how was it for you of like learning to love the game and finding that mentality of work? Curious how that evolved for you.
Yeah, I mean, listen, I don't think there's such a thing as a perfect player, or person, or kid, or like anybody. I'm sure, I messed around and I was a kid and goofed off and stuff. But, at some point, I think it kind of clicked maybe when I was like 14, 15, which is, I think, a good maturity age for a lot of kids, where you start to identify like, maybe I'm getting good at something, or for me, getting good at hockey, where it's like, wow, this actually might be my like a calling in my life. Like this might be what I could do, and I could actually pursue hockey at a college level or something like that. But you bring up a really good point to, hey, like it's a really, to be honest with you, like razor thin line of burnout and passion. I can only speak on my own experience, but hockey is just that's what made me go. Everything about the sport, like the dingy smell of like the Zamboni, like what is that, like natural gas air, or whatever the smell of Zamboni makes in a rink was like, it just excites me. I mean, still, I walk into a rink to do a session. I mean, I do it literally hours every day, and I just get so excited driving to a rink and thinking about what I'm going to do. And for me, it was just this internal, like, just fire of like, this is what I do. I just love hockey. I loved shooting a puck hard. I loved how a puck would travel in the air. I loved skating fast. I loved, making plays, like that fun thing of like possessing a puck. And so then you kind of just get this, like, to be honest with you, I think the best word, positively would be obsession. Like I just became obsessed with getting good at things that I knew were important to being a good hockey player, skating fast or getting strong or having a good shot or, learning positions and stuff like that. But it really is a fine line, because, you can't push an 8-year-old to think like that, because you will burn them out, and then it won't be fun. And then they're not going to pursue it at a high level. It's a matter of like the kid always asking for more. And, I think the one thing that I'm so grateful and I have so much love for my parents and how they raised me is that, I had no competitive advantage with hockey. My parents never played. No one in my family ever played, actually. But all they did was just push me to work hard. They didn't really, they weren't critical of my outcome of like my statistics. Maybe if I didn't play as hard as, or didn't do as well as I could have, they maybe would have been hard on me, but it wasn't like a statistic driving, tongue lashing. It was just, you got to work as hard as you can. You always got to be a good teammate. It was these really just kind of universal life skill type concepts that then I fell into this groove of, I just did these like really important, like tangible skills well. And then that started like invigorating all these little like subsidiary things of like, well, I got to get better at my edges, or I got to get better at my position or my individual skills or whatever it was. So, I mean, if there's any parents that are listening, I think it's really important to just, you just keep surrounding your kid with resources, but then you also got to listen to them. And it's not just listen with your ears, but it's listen with your eyes. Like if you're seeing the bad body language, if you're seeing, if their schedule becomes saturated, I think this is really important too. I always, whenever I went to a rink, and I just remember this even at a young age, like I just couldn't wait to be there. And I'm sure like anybody, there's probably times that I complained and I didn't want to be there and it was early or cold or whatever. But I do remember that I didn't skate every day. I skated a couple times a week, or I had breaks, I had seasons. So I was always hungry and motivated to get back at it. And that's one thing that I think it's tricky, because obviously the game has progressed a ton, and development and things happen at a younger age, and kids are better at a younger age, and it's more competitive. But There needs to be breaks, because if a kid's schedule becomes really saturated and they're always on the ice, and it doesn't become a privilege to be on the ice anymore. It just becomes an obligation, or it becomes like what you do. That starts to kind of tilt the scale towards burnout versus, inspiration. And that's something that even what we do, we're really deliberate with how we even program. Like, through April and May, we don't do a lot, and we only go by appointment only, because just philosophically, kids need to pump the brakes. They need to pick up more now a lacrosse stick or a baseball bat or a soccer ball, golf club, something. I don't know, anything, but you need breaks, and maybe more so mentally. And I've been having this conversation with a lot of families lately on the younger end, with things are so much more stressful and competitive, and the anxiety and pressure on kids at a younger age. That's what, kids or players that were my age felt when I was like 15 to 20, obviously in a much different place to manage that. Now kids are getting that pressure from 7 that are playing, competitive hockey, AA, AAA, whatever it is. They're feeling that at 7, 8, 9, spring tryouts and multiple teams and 60 plus game schedules, playing really like, teams that have a national ranking. Kids my age, players, adults my age, we didn't have that. So we didn't have to manage that stress and that pressure. So if anything, that's just a big blinking, like, warning sign of, hey, I need to work that much harder to avoid burnout and keep it passionate, for my kid, and keep it fun for my kid. Which, some people, sometimes I think they heed that warning, but that's really important. It's really important.
Yeah. And it's tough when you see everyone doing everything else, and with social media, you just see the good snippets. You don't see the full journey. So that's an absolutely key element. And I want to go back to a few things. I think you had a few golden nuggets. I'll start with overtraining or getting into it too much. I like to think of it like hockey as in cake. Like, if you have cake every once in a while, it's awesome. You love it. You look forward to it. If you eat cake every day, sooner or later it sucks, and it starts getting really bad, and you start breaking down, and it's just terrible. So don't eat too much cake. That would be my thing. But even going back further than that, you talked about loving possessing the puck. And like, I think that is a great way to make players love the game. I remember going from like team to team, not so much as in jumping around organizations, but just going from like one age group to the next and different coaches. And like the coaches that wanted you to possess the puck were so much more fun to play with. Like, you could make things happen. You're expressing your creativity. And I think we forget, like, hockey is a way that kids are able to express themselves, and having that puck just makes it so much more fun for them, rather than dumping and chasing, just throwing pucks at the net, whatever it may be. I think that's an amazing thing. I'm curious your thoughts on possessing the puck. Obviously, everyone wants to have a puck possession team, but like, you almost need the permission to possess the puck, because it increases the risk a little bit.
Yeah. Well, yeah. So, I mean, I guess there's a few points to that, but, especially with our younger kids, it's such a simple phrase, but it's like, can you win a hockey game if you don't have the puck? No, you can't. So don't give it away. Dumps, there's a coach I played for years ago. He would always call them deposits. And he's like, it's just another deposit to the bank. And if your dump isn't a proper deposit, you're just giving it away. He's like, you can't give away your money. You got to deposit. And it's like, so if you're going to dump the puck, it's got to be a positive deposit, right? And it's the same thing with like a puck. And there's little games, like every coach, and yeah, obviously USA Hockey's done a great job, and there's a ton of science and research behind it. But stuff as simple as just keep away. It sounds so remedial and so not cool and so not Instagram worthy, but keep away hockey is some of the best teaching. We do that, like even the stupid stuff, 5 minutes at the beginning of practice, you throw like 2 pucks on the ice, you got 20 kids trying to keep them. But like even small area games that we like to do a lot of stuff, like there's no shot, there's no nets in the zone. It's just 3-on-3 keep away. And you're teaching kids to move away from the puck. You're teaching kids to just keep the puck on their stick, and understanding too. And listen, no kid's perfect, and there's not, it's not because of bad coaching or anything like that. But there's this idea of like, you get to the puck and then you hit it, or you slap at it, or you just get rid of it. Whereas like, your play is either a pass or you keep it. And if you don't have a pass, you're not making a play. So then if you're not making a play, you're making a problem. So don't make problems, make plays. And it's like, then get your hips around the puck and just protect the puck. And then it's a great teaching point, because teammates have to move to become an option, right? And listen, it's not that kids aren't as smart as they used to be, or certain kids in certain programs aren't as good as others. It's just, I just think young kids don't know what they don't know. And it's not get to the puck and hit it. It's get to the puck and possess it. At a young age, certainly you don't teach these things, but then it's fun as kids get older, because then you really get to start teaching like those high level nuances of like, bring the puck out of the zone, suck a player, open lane, suck players out of position to make other plays. And, that's obviously like really fun hockey to not only coach, but to watch at any level, really. But yeah, I mean, obviously it is a puck possession game, and it's the importance of owning the puck, because without that little piece of rubber on your stick, you're chasing it around all night, and then you're going to lose.
Yeah, that's the fun kind of hockey. Possession. How do we suck players in? You're starting to get into these high levels of thinking, and players have so much access. Like you and I did not have video. Like I remember seeing myself on video for the first time, being, how terrible am I? Like, geez Louise, if I would have known, like I need this information. It's just amazing how great some of these young kids are thinking in the game. But I get concerned sometimes with schedules that get so packed and they're doing so much. Are players and parents almost too busy to think and just enjoy the game and pick their spots of how to best enjoy it, how to best spend their time, how to best spend their resources? Do you think that's an issue of being too busy to think, and those that maybe add in a little more slack have more creativity, have more fun, able to go further with it?
Yeah, I try to remind as many families that will listen to me that like it is an extremely small minority. I mean, we're talking like a percent or a fraction of percent of kids or adults, I guess, let's just say, the quote unquote made it. However, whatever your definition of making it is, they didn't play hockey with the single goal to make it. Like I don't know any of my friends. I certainly, at no point did I ever say like, I'm doing this to be a pro. I wanted to be a pro, but I did it because I loved it. And that's really important, because like I look back on it, and regardless of when hockey ends for every kid, all you have is your memories. All you have is your time and your experience. And I'm just so grateful for friendships I had with coaches, with teammates, like my family had with other families. I'm so grateful for the memories of road trips with my family, and like hockey tournaments that turned into vacations, basically like getaway weekend vacations, basically like every month. But and I just think that a lot of families, they get enamored with the teams or the rankings or statistics, and it's like, yeah, sure, to some degree some of that stuff matters a little bit, but at the end of the day, what matters the most is the experience. I think it goes into your earlier point of like, how do you fuel passion? Well, you fuel passion with positive memories. And at no point did I ever have, and I guess I'm very blessed for this, but a negative hockey memory. Yeah, like losing games or getting yelled at, but like, again, that was part of the process and part of the journey. But like, the more positive memories you can pack into the experience of playing hockey, well, doesn't that just instantly throw like another log on the fire of like the motivation and the excitement and passion of it? Because at the end of the day, when hockey ends, it ends. And then what? And then you get a career, you go to school, or you do what you do, you have a family, whatever. Every hockey player looks back and like can always smile at like a stupid memory with a teammate, or a road trip, or a story in a locker room, or a big game or a tournament or something, right? And it's like that's what mattered most. That I don't think a young, inexperienced hockey parent can quantify. Maybe a hockey parent that played and has the same cherished memories, but that's what matters most, because when it ends, it ends. And whatever you did, sure, that's great, but all you're going to be left with is those memories. And that's ultimately why we do hockey's a privileged sports, or sports are a commodity. That's why you do those things.
Oh yeah, I love that. I remember vividly being around like pools at the hotel, and we had a teammate that had a guitar, pulls it out and he's playing, and we found out that one of our other teammates is his bandmate and now they're going after it. It's too much fun. Yeah. Or mini hockey in the hallways. Like that's the good times. Yeah, I love that passion. You fuel passion with positive memories. That's a line I'm stealing from you. So thank you for that one. That one's fantastic.
True. I think it's true.
Absolutely. Moving on here. I'm curious. So COVID was obviously difficult, but I think it showed a lot of people the value of off ice or doing things virtually, whether that be virtual workouts, virtual video sessions, like, or it could even be technique. Like I had a few players where they would send me them videos of them shooting. I'd do some corrections. Hey, try this, this, and that. They do it, send it back. And like, there's a lot of benefits that I found were even more powerful than I thought. And I already was using it. So I'm curious from your perspective in helping players and training players, what can a player do via virtual / dry land or any of those to help themselves? So I think there's a lot of fun and a lot of improvement that can be made rather than just being at the rink all the time. Maybe you do it at a beach in Florida, like that's your vacation.
Of course. Yeah. I mean, I guess there's a few points to it. I mean, any young hockey player, like they should want to just shoot pucks and stick handle like all day. I shouldn't say they should want to, but I mean, it's definitely, I know my childhood revolved around playing street hockey and just shooting pucks. I vividly remember, my dad took it was a broken sheet of plexiglass from this rink by my house. And that was like my synthetic shooting lane. It wasn't synthetic, it's a piece of broken glass, but that's what I shot pucks off of my whole childhood. And I just hammered pucks all day long and shot pucks and shot pucks and shot pucks. And it was like such a fun activity for me, and stick handling and just counting how many times could I bounce a tennis ball on my blade, like stupid stuff like that. And look back at it, it's like, well, it's actually really good individual skill development. But it changes from like that at that young age of just working on your stick skills, which could be literally done every single day. I mean, during COVID, we were doing virtual stuff. I just moved a couch in my living room and I had like kind of like this little open foyer area. It couldn't have been more, I could barely get like my stick from wall to wall. Like I'd maybe like, I don't know, let's just be generous and say I had a 10 foot by 10 foot area. And I was doing full on like stick handling, these things, like every little pattern I can think of and dream up and do, and then transitioning that into like body weight workouts. And like, from the youth end of it, I think it's really just stick skills are really important, shooting and stick handling. And, because you're younger, right? Your body's growing. I don't think there should be any strain on like training, but as kids start to get older, the dry land component becomes a really important thing. I mean, there's kind of a big cliche saying like, oh, you don't score goals from the weight room. And I think that's literally the most ignorant statement I've ever heard. Because the stronger you are, the more athletic you are, the better you're going to perform, or the less likely you are to get hurt. So in hindsight, you actually will score more goals when you're on the ice, healthy, performing at a high level. I think it's just more of a figure of speech or a literal statement that lazy kids wanted to say. But so as kids get older, spending time in a weight room is absolutely critical. And hockey is a really unique sport because you look at, let's just canvas the NHL. And if you were to have a bunch of NHL athletes standing next to a bunch of NFL or NBA athletes, it's a very, very different build. But that's just because what the sport demands. It's so high aerobic and anaerobic at the same time, that you just gotta be a really, really good athlete. You gotta be in great shape. And as kids get older, I think the importance of nutrition is so critical. And it's something that I look back on my high school years. I regret not having the education and not being a little bit more wise with what I was putting in my body, because I trained so insanely hard, but I didn't match it with that same effort in the kitchen or at the restaurant or in the cafeteria, wherever I was eating. I just ate like a normal high school. I just ate crap food all the time. And it was like, and I look back on it and it's like, I figured that out when I got to college, and it's like, wow, now I'm actually really strong and I've got the physique and I've got all these gains. Because, you've got to absolutely, as hard as you're going to work in your skates on the ice, doing skating drills and shooting and battle drills, whatever you're doing, that same effort has to be matched in the weight room. And especially in today's generation, 10, 20, 30 years ago, you can get away with not maybe being the best athlete, but just having really good skills or a really good brain. Well, now you need to have a really good brain, really good skills, and a really good healthy body, a really strong body. You have to have that trifecta to be whatever you want to be, a Division I or Division III, a college, a USHL, a pro hockey player. You have to have all of those tools. Performance training, we spend a lot of time on it with our kids in the summer. We always refer out to a lot of different coaches that we work with, but I just can't. I really, especially my older kids that will come up to us, but yeah, coach, I want to play junior hockey. I want to play college hockey. Okay, whatever. That's great. How come you're not working out 6 days a week? Don't tell me that then, because that in and of itself is telling me that you don't want to do that you're not going to commit to doing that, because you have to be, pound for pound, really strong, and there's a lot of different ways to get there. But that focus on nutrition, I guess the long about answer is, how do you improve your dry land? Well, you better eat well. And if you're young, you better always keep a stick in your hand, or once you get to those teenage years and beyond, you better make the weight room your second home. I guess maybe your third home behind the rink, but that's, I guess my 2 cents on it.
Yeah, it's funny. I remember coaching high school hockey 2 years ago, and I had this kid. He was always tired, and I'm like, "So what do you eat?" Like, he was at a private school, so he had access to the best of the best foods.
Yeah.
And he's telling me his diet. I'm like, "Dude, nothing but processed sugars." I'm like, "No wonder you're tired the whole time." I'm like, "Trust me, go get a gallon of water, drink that every single day, and stop eating sugar. Nothing else, and I guarantee you'll feel much better."
We
started in the right direction.
Yeah. We did a video on this not too long ago, but just sometimes, in my opinion, a big reason, and I think a lot of nutritionists would agree with this, but inconsistency in athletes, it doesn't come from effort. It doesn't come from a lack of ability. It comes from their nutrition. In the more sound, the more consistent of a diet, healthy of a diet you have, that instantly is reflected on your performance. How you're, whether you're talking about your endurance and how tired you don't get, the strength, the clarity of your mind, how your body's processing and thinking, and the ability to, have those legs late in the game, or to play, these kids that are playing, 4 or 5 games in a weekend at these tournaments and showcases and stuff, you got to fuel your efforts, and it's just so important. Important.
I definitely failed at that in high school as well. So chalk me up is definitely way worse than you probably. But I did realize at the end of my high school, and definitely finally in college, the difference it makes by eating whole foods. Just as simple as that. You don't even need a protein shake. Just eat some salmon or something like that.
Yeah, of course.
Absolutely fascinating. So you work with a ton of players. So I'm curious, with all these hours at the rink, what are some common technique issues that you're seeing, or what are some things that you're commonly seeing amongst players where you're like, man, they really should have had that at a younger age? Or what are some things that you're like, pretty much every player I work with, I know I can fix this and they're going to be better. So going technical here.
Well, yeah, it's hard. I mean, listen, every single player in the world is unique and has a different set of deficiencies, a different set of strengths, wants, needs, all that stuff. I guess it's really hard to kind of blanket statement that with we see this a lot with these kids. Listen, I think every kid needs to have a better focus on skating. I just think that's kind of common sense, and every coach will probably say the same thing, if you can't skate, you can't play. Well, of course, you've got to be a great skater to be an effective player. The conversation changes as kids get older. Maybe we start to focus more on a hockey IQ thing, maybe how they're, how they process decisions and how they make plays in the game. To younger kids, we just try to keep it a really, and I probably push this point really hard, but try to make it really, really fun. So again, kind of what I said earlier, but a kid associates just positive memories to hockey, and then hockey was just super fun that hour. And it doesn't mean we're playing tag and wasting time goofing off. It just means, a really positive coaching delivery. It means a really positive set of drills that, rewarded kids with shots or goals or fun scoring opportunities. So I think that conversation changes a lot based on the age, the ability level a lot. Younger kids, we just try to really hone in on technique, because I think as the kid grows, they're going to either grow into positive habits or negative habits based on the foundation that they got at a young age. And sure, things can be changed and improved over time, but I mean, wouldn't you just rather have a really great foundation laid at 8 or 9 years old or 7 years old with if we're talking stride, from just a triple extension and a full recovery under your hip, and controlled upper body movement, and arms reaching through your stride, all these little things. Well, why not just learn that and learn it really well from like 5 to 9 years old? So when kids get stronger and then the game actually does get complicated, they have the foundation. They don't need to like second guess and relearn how to do it properly. So skating for me is huge. If we're talking shooting, same thing. I mean, it's really honing in on the technique of how kids, everything from puck handling, passing, shooting, it comes from your edges first, which goes back to skating. So the better you become at skating, well, every single stick skill will improve based on your stance, based on your edge control. So, I guess it's technical, and it becomes a really individualized conversation. But I mean, that's kind of the direction that we'll take once we make an assessment on a kid or a group of kids or their needs.
Yeah, it's fascinating, and every group's different, every player's different. But like, I remember seeing once a player, and I had a fellow assistant who was like, I don't know what's up with this player. I can't figure it out. Like, something just seems weird. I'm like, dude, he doesn't have an outside edge. Like, he would like skip off his outside edge, but he had unbelievable inside edges. Like, he probably played a ton of tag as a kid. Never had to get on his outside edge, but he was always stopping and starting, juking out. But I'm like, outside edges seem to be one that I find a lot of. That's pretty massive. And then depending on the stick handling skills, like the top hand seems to be really underdeveloped, especially because it's like stuck on the hip. Like, that's something I see a ton. It's like even with like some strong stick handlers, they'll still get that puck on their hip or the top hand on their hip too much. And it just, they don't have any range of motion, or they've got to skate an extra distance around. It's just, it's amazing. But like you said, you can lay that down. Like, for example, I study a ton of European soccer. Like, they're like, by like age 13, you're pretty much done. If you don't have it technically together, like, it's just super hard after that to put it all together. So like, their whole idea is like technique. And then from that point on, it's like, okay, technique's fine. Now, how do we make it better, faster, stronger,
of course,
smarter, rather than technical?
Yeah. I think something that is really important on the development piece, though, is that, a child has to want to get better, so sure, you can be working with the quote unquote, the best coach ever, right? Whoever you think that might be. But ultimately, if you're not hearing what the coach, not just listening, but hearing what the coach is saying, and something I tell kids all the time is that, like, listen, I certainly wasn't a superstar, and there's a lot of things that, I'd love to do differently if I could be an 8-year-old again. But at the end of the day, all of the successes that I had in hockey were predicated on two things, and it was coachability and it was work ethic. And it's like, then everything followed that, like my development, this being a student of the game, that fell in line with being coachable. And I went to the rink wanting, yeah, sure, I was a kid. I goofed off. I had fun. But especially once I kind of like that switch went on in my head that, like, hey, I'm a hockey player. I do hockey. This is what I am. Then it was coachability. And it's like, you got to be coachable. And okay, if we're talking, like you mentioned, top hand stick handling, like, if you're doing sessions with a kid or a team, like, you have to keep telling the same kid the same skill over and over and over, week after week for a season. It's like, well, if you don't want to get better, you're not going to get better. And that's great. And that's fine. Then you just, it's important that that family and that child or that player really, has really honest, and transparent goals with themselves. That's really important, so wanting, to listen and get better and take those improvements. And, if it's an outside edge thing, well, you got to listen to your coach. You got to really implement that. You got to try. You got to, put down that comfort level of, that vulnerability of getting made fun of when you fall, and put yourself out there and be vulnerable and improve it. It's very important.
Yeah. And that's so massive what you just said there, of like having the ability to have a coachability. Like, some players I don't think understand. I mean, most of them do now. I feel like this is getting better. from when I first started where it is now, but just like the ability of taking feedback. Like feedback is a gift, like whether you like it or not. Like someone's actively willing to try to tell you this. Like the worst thing that can happen is someone totally gives up on you and you don't hear from them. Like at that point, you know, you've screwed up. If someone's still willing to coach you, it's a lot better. So I'm assuming you've come across that a few times.
Yeah, I've had to remind a few kids that over the years, or especially some of the kids that I've worked with that are really talented. And listen, I don't yell and scream ever at a kid, because I absolutely hated when coaches talk to me that way. And I just want to be, you know, the best version of myself and create a positive environment. But I tell that to kids when they're like, oh man, like if I was hard on a kid, or, you know, I'd shorten the bench on them, but it was to teach them something. It's like, I'm hard on you because I believe in you. And that's what you want. Like you just exactly said, when a coach stops talking to you, then there's some concern and maybe up on you. But if a coach is constantly in your ear, well, they believe in you. They see something in you, and they know that you can perform better. They know that, you know, you haven't reached your full potential, and that's what you want. And what a great statement, though. It's feedback really is a gift. You know, criticisms, constructive criticisms, that's a gift. That's the price of admission. You know, so take them and apply them.
Yeah. And the second piece you had that I thought was absolutely critical was like this open self-awareness, where you're like actually honest with yourself in your self-assessment. I think that's the beginning of any kind of improvement, whether you're a coach, player, parent, human being, whatever. It's like having that ability to self-aware and reflect. Did you keep a journal at all as a player or as a coach? Or how did, like, obviously you were a deep thinker, but like, I'm curious if you like set aside moments or found ways to do that purposefully.
Not, actually I worked, so I would have been 19 at the time, 19. I was playing a Cornwall Colts, like Central Junior Hockey League, junior hockey before I got to college. That was actually the first time in my career I've ever worked with a sports psychologist. And it was someone who was just affiliated with the team. It wasn't something that I went out and seeked out personally. It was just, he was around the team and he talked to guys, but that was the first time that I actually then really took a step back and, kind of tried to dissect my mindset and my approach and my mental, where I was at in my headspace. And ever since then, that's when I really started taking like visualization into my game. I did not journal, but I would, to the student of the game part, like I watched a lot of hockey of myself if I could get video when I was older or just on TV. So I guess that was kind of like my version of journaling to some degree, but really the visualization piece for me was huge. And we try to do a little bit of that with the project. And one of our coaches, Jake Noonan, is amazing at these type of things, but the visualization and walking yourself through scenarios and rebounding from a bad scenario, from a good scenario, seeing, just positive thoughts, positive vibes, because listen, having that self-awareness, like there's highs and lows for every career, every kid in every career, in every sport, so that's important. Having lows is important, and having those humbling moments of those scary moments of like, maybe I'm not good enough. Maybe I'm not going to make it. Well, that's adversity that you need to work through, because very, very, very few players are on easy street their whole life that just didn't have to work for anything, that just made it to the top. And hey, good for them if they did, but I'd rather be on the other end of it where you had to work for it and had some lows and some setbacks, because that's, it's an opportunity. I got cut from more teams than I ever made. And every single time it was an opportunity. So it was an opportunity to prove people wrong. It was an opportunity to grow and develop. And it was also an opportunity to self-reflect, to say, hey, someone doesn't think I'm good enough. So maybe I'm not. What do I need to improve? And that's very, very important. And then it also it reassesses that it moves the needle with, hey, maybe I'm not going to the NHL next year. Maybe I got a couple steps before that, or whatever it might be. But that self-awareness is really, really important, and just being in tune with your self progression and where you're at. And I don't like to use the word comparing yourself to others, but just kind of keeping a, an eye on the horizon, I guess is a light way to put it. But, that is important, very important.
Within the visualization realm, I really enjoyed how you were talking about like reinforcing positive vibes and positive thinking, because there's no one who's going to talk to you more than yourself, right? So how do you, like, you don't want to be delusional. Again, we talked about being that self-reflective and being aware, but how do you get yourself into the proper mindset that you want to put in the work, that you want to improve, that you're asking yourself that question that you talked about, what do I need to do to improve? Like, I think that is absolutely massive. The players that are able to do that, I feel like the lows are less low, the highs happen more often than not, but that's not always easy and it doesn't always come natural. But I think that's absolutely massive, is how do we talk to ourselves? How do we handle these humbling moments of like, okay, I failed, but I'm going to do better. Like, I think that's absolutely massive. I love that.
Yeah, I mean, your self-talk has to be positive, obviously, first and foremost. And I would just always, especially as I got older and the sport became more serious in my life, it was kind of just having, moments to myself away from my teammates where, like, even when I, getting dressed in the locker room, even I just went in the bathroom, just washed my hands or took a minute by myself, just, okay, getting ready for practice. Okay, it's time to work. It's time to get my stuff together here. Or especially in games, my teammates on a few different teams in like college and pro would like kind of make a joke of it. But I used to do this thing where I would, coach would come in. I don't want to say it was like a 7:00 game. We had like a 5:30 pre-game meeting, whatever it was. After that, guys would go tape sticks, stick handle, do their thing, jump some rope, kick the ball around. I would literally find a place in the rink at every place I played, and I would literally hide. I'd get away from I'd find janitor closets. I'd find under the bleachers. I'd be by the Zamboni pit. You name it. I found a place that I was around no one. I would just hide. And I just put my hoodie on. I wasn't a big music guy personally. I would just think about the game. I was a defenseman. I think about breakouts. I think about making a big hit. My things that I would, being dynamic, good gap, good stick, stuff like that. But obviously those thoughts changed over my career. And as I got better, they were more refined and more detailed. But even when I was like younger and junior in college, it was just like, all right. And I'd always finish my thought with like, got to have some fun tonight. Got to have some fun tonight. Because as things get more serious, and even for little kids that are playing competitive games, winning is a priority. And all these things, the number one priority is always fun. It has to be fun. And you have to reposition and change your perspective of why you're in that big game or that competitive game or whatever. It's because this is really fun. Like, this is fun to play in front of this crowd or play against these top kids in my state or city or country, whatever. That's fun. Making plays or playing against players that could prevent me from making plays. That's fun. And that's kind of, it started at fun. And then as I said, I got older, I got better. Those thoughts became more refined, but
always coming back to gotta have fun tonight. I love that. That is amazing. Gotta have fun. I mean, that's a competitive advantage. Like, how many programs out there are super serious? If one just had fun the entire time and the kids loved it, like, it would be off the charts. But nonetheless, one thing I want to touch on, and then we can leave this to an open-ended question and talk and wherever you want to take this. But I think that the number one item, and there's many items that I truly appreciate about you. But I think the number one for me is your ability to communicate with players and parents. Like, you never tell them anything other than the straight up truth. And it comes from a very sincere place, and you do it consistently. I'm curious where that came from and how you developed that style, because I've never had any issues with parents, and I've coached 10 plus years. And I feel like that has come back to communication with players, parents, everyone around. And it's criminally underrated. Like, I hate referees that like hide whenever you're trying to talk to them. Like, I just want some communication. And I can't imagine that other coaches, players, parents, etc., don't love that.
Oh my God. Yeah. I mean, listen, I take all of the good and the bad from every coach that I ever, got to work with in my entire career. And I think that's like any coach, you're the sum of all of that. Right. But the best hockey I ever played in my career is when I had a great relationship with my coach. I knew where I stood. I knew what he liked, what they didn't like. There was no reading between the lines that didn't exist, the gray area. The worst years of hockey I ever had were when I played for coaches that didn't communicate, maybe didn't, they yelled, they ridiculed you, whatever it was, they were negative. But again, the foundation, they didn't communicate. And that's something that I just, for a few years, I did coach some midget teams. I've helped with the USHL team before, but it was just, hey, letting a kid know where they stand every day, every week, every month. And the same goes with parents. I hear, coaches be like, oh, the worst thing about youth sports is parents. Well, I actually wholeheartedly disagree with that. I mean, the parents that's so fun. It's building more relationships with great people. And you know what? Parents get stressed out when they don't know what's going on. And they don't know what's going on because you never told them. So take the time to have open conversations. You don't have to like or agree with what I'm saying, but this is my mindset. This is what I see. Let me give you a glimpse from my perspective. And then let's meet in the middle and find a solution that makes this a really positive experience. Because ultimately, as a coach, I want what's best for my team first. And then ultimately, I want my kids, and now I guess, from a development standpoint, to be the best version of themselves. And they can't get to that point if they don't know what to do, or they don't know what I want from them. And listen, a child doesn't know what they don't know. So help them learn, help them grow, talk to them. And I think that's so important. And for coaches that are listening, it's like, that might be one of the best investments you can ever make in your kids. It's not, anything other. It's not some expensive video system. It's not some fancy skills coach. It's not whatever. It's not more games. It's make time to build relationships with your kids, make time to build relationships with your parents, and be really, really, really transparent, because there shouldn't be a guessing game, because the guessing game creates anxiety and stress and frustration and ultimately poor performance. So like I said, when I coached, and again, some of the amazing coaches I played for in my career, we would just have weekly, bi-weekly, whatever it was, different levels, different capacity, but just conversations. Hey, Russ, this is what I like. This is where you're at. Let's watch this clip. Hey, tough weekend. This is why. Whatever. Hey, yeah, I rolled you off the power play. This is why. The worst years I had where no one told me anything, so I'm guessing and I'm spinning my tires, and then I'm like creating these negative thoughts, and I'm self-absorbed with like all these really inaccurate assumptions. But that's because no one told me anything. I didn't know what the hell was going on. And if they just would have told me these things, and I think that the tune of this conversation changes a little bit as kids get older. Maybe that 14, but maybe 15, 16 and older. Now I think the conversation really becomes more so just with the player specifically. Sure, loop in parents and keep them informed. I think that's important. But, at that age, especially, like, I'm not coaching parents and families. I'm coaching kids or players, so it's on the player to perform, and it's on that player to have the accountability of what they're asked to do. That's important at that age. And again, let's just call it that bantam, midget, high school, junior, college age. It changes a little bit then, but even then, involve the parents, communicate to them. Hey, recap a meeting, put a quick email together. I think every parent would really appreciate that. But yeah, communication is key. That's for sure.
And I love that last piece you talked about with, like, the kids have to eventually be the ones fighting the unfight. Like, if they've got the issue with any ice time or any issue with the coach or teammates or whatever it may be, like, the longer you let that go, I mean, it doesn't solve itself. Like, you've got to learn those skills, and the only way to do it is through experience, like you said. So I love that idea of, like, slowly giving them more and more control, where they see the accountability. They're creating these self-feedback loops. They're understanding that they can control an outcome. Their work pays off. Like, I just absolutely love that. And love everything you're doing at the Ohio Hockey Project. So, yeah, anything else you want to mention? I mean, this has been a wide-ranging conversation on a lot of good topics, and I think there's a lot to be valued for many different folks in hockey.
Yeah, big time. No, again, we could talk about a lot of topics, but the things we covered. I mean, I guess the big takeaway was just, you want to be successful in the sport. My secret recipe was coachability and work ethic. And then ultimately it was, the passion for the sport. You gotta love what you do, and you'll see it in your child. If they're losing that drive, change things up, give them a break. That's a really important investment, and it's an investment that doesn't cost you a lot of money. Is time away from a rink. In fact, it saves you a lot of money actually. But it's
Just
probably has it's funny because it actually has the biggest dividend of anything you could ever do for your kid is a break. But yeah, the passion is so important. And for any athletes listening to it is, if you really, really are serious about your craft, commit to it. And what amazing examples we have as athletes. LeBron James is probably the most infamous athlete on the face of the planet, arguably in our generation. And, all he talks about is his commitment to greatness, his commitment to his craft and to his body, his nutrition, being a student of the game. And it's like, what an amazing mentor. And obviously, I guess anybody from Northeast Ohio is extra biased because he's representing us. But yeah, you just got to be a student of the game, and you just got to have this obsession with just bettering yourself every chance you get.
All right. Final question. I appreciate you coming on, and thank you for doing this. So you've played all these years, you've studied the game in depth. What is your best playing trick? What is the trick that you love to play on, whether it be an on-rushing forward checkers or you're at the point, you throw a fake shot? Like, do you have any tips, tricks, or things where you're like, oh, I gotcha, I'm just having fun out here?
Yeah, probably just pass it to the best player on the ice and get off. I'm just kidding.
Too good.
Yeah, no, best trick. I wasn't a hyper skilled guy that's going to go in like Sports Center top 10 a guy. I was a very, very, very big proponent of like the north-south of the drive wide game. I'd make a quick cut in, and then I'd push the puck wide. And, if I had the speed or I had the length to do it, I just could put the puck outside your reach, and I'm going to beat you wide and do something from that vantage point. That was nothing super Instagram sexy about it, but it was extremely effective. And I think more kids need to play that way. Don't try to slow down and dance through people. Play the game fast and down the wall.
Effectiveness works. At the end of the day, it's all about who gets the job done. Doesn't matter how you get it done. So couldn't agree more. That's good. I was a small guy. I had different tools, so they all work, but you can make them work for you depending on what your God-given talents, attributes, what you've worked to put together are. So no, Russ, really appreciate you coming on. This was absolutely a blast, and thoroughly enjoyed it. And finally, we were able to connect and get you on.
Yeah, I appreciate it, man. You're doing some great things with the Arsenal, and I hope some listeners are taking the time to tune in, because every talk you have and every article you release is some really, really valuable content. And again, just trying to better yourself and absorb as much information as you can. This is a great resource for it.
Oh, absolutely appreciate it. Again, one last shout out to the Ohio Hockey Project, OHP, the project as we like to call it. So thanks again for everything you do.
Happy to be here.
That concludes this week's episode. Thanks for joining us here at Hockey IQ. If you haven't already, take a quick moment to hit that subscribe button, give us a thumbs up, and drop a review. If you want to be a great teammate, even recommend us to a friend. You can follow us at Hockey's Arsenal on Twitter and Instagram. Check out the website, hockeysarsenal.com, where you can subscribe to the weekly newsletter. You won't regret it. Catch your buttes here next week for a brand new episode.